Chapter 559. Chu Xiu's temper had never been good. It wasn't his habit to not talk back after being scolded. Moreover, he had appeared with the identity of a demon. If he wasn't more arrogant and insolent, how could he be called a demon? Under the pressure of Chu Xiu's murderous intent, although the three young martial artists of Chunyang Dao's sect were shivering, they still held their heads high and revealed an unyielding stance. The three of them were shouting about slaying demons and defending justice. In the eyes of others, the disciples of Chunyang Dao's sect seemed to be sick in the head. But in actual fact, to the disciples of Chunyang Dao's sect, it was their belief. It was a belief that was instilled in them since they were young. Speaking of which, the reason why Chunyang Dao's sect had such a stubborn thought wasn't only related to the personalities of their sect masters, it was also related to the status of Chunyang Dao's sect itself. In the past, Chunyang Dao's sect was the leader of the world's Dao sects and even the leader of the righteous sections. Others could ignore slaying demons and defending justice, but they had to do so. They had to use such methods to maintain their status. It was a pity that the pugilistic world wasn't black or white. By doing so, Chunyang Dao's sect would only create more enmity with the demon sections. To Chunyang Dao's sect, there weren't many benefits. It was just like how they were provoking Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu wasn't Daoist Guangning who would let them off. Seeing that Chu Xiu seemed like he was going to kill them, Daoist Guangning couldn't be bothered about breaking the formation anymore. He hurriedly said, "Little friend Lin, give me some face. These three juniors of Dao's sect are insensible, so you don't have to be so serious. They don't know what's the most important thing in this small mortal world. Don't you know? Killing them wouldn't bring you any benefits other than offending Chunyang Dao's sect." Daoist Guangning was really a good person. This time around, it was Chunyang Dao's sect that made a mistake and took the initiative to seek death. Daoist Guangning could pretend that he didn't see it and continue to break the formation. Furthermore, he had already reminded the three pure Yang sect disciples to keep a low profile and not cause trouble. In the end, they did not listen. Therefore, even if Daoist Guangning turned a blind eye to it, he had already done his best. In the end, Daoist Guangning still spoke up for them. This was already generous enough. However, even though Daoist Guangning had good intentions, the three martial arts practitioners of Chunyang Dao's sect didn't appreciate his kindness at all. One of them said angrily, "Senior Guangning, you didn't kill this devil Dao villain, but you still call him a little friend. Is this something that our righteous Dao sect would do? Even though our abilities are weak, we aren't people that are afraid of death. If this devil Dao villain dares to touch us, the seniors of our Chunyang Dao sect will naturally take revenge for us in the future." Chu Xiu finally knew why Li Feilian, who was ranked 4th on the Longhu ranking in the past, that extremely low-profile fella, would kill the geniuses of Chunyang Dao sect. This bunch of fellas simply didn't give anyone a way out. They just had to push the matter into a situation where they wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Just now, Daoist Guangning had already spoken to make peace. He was a senior of the pugilistic world and treated Chu Xiu as an equal. In terms of face, both of them could live. Moreover, he was the only one who could break the formation in this valley. Chu Xiu didn't want to fall out with him. Therefore, as long as the three of them admitted defeat, Chu Xiu would only teach them a lesson. He would still spare their lives. But now, the three of them were obviously forcing Chu Xiu to kill them. Looking at Daoist Guangning, Chu Xiu said in a hoarse voice, "Daoist Guangning, you are a sensible person. This isn't the battlefield of the righteous Dao sect and I didn't initiate any trouble. However, if someone wants to court death, then don't blame me. Someone pointed at my nose and wanted to kill me. If I don't even let out a fart, where would the dignity of my devil Dao be?" As soon as he finished his words, Daoist Guangning's expression changed. He had even tightened his grip on the Dao sword in his hand and said hurriedly, "Wait, unfortunately, it was too late. Against 3-5 Chi's Unification Realm martial artists, Chu Xiu didn't need to put in so much effort. With a wave of his hand, his mental strength turned into distorted strings. Following Chu Xiu's plucking, the soul-absorbing zither melody exploded. Soul-suppressing Hades tune, sending you to the underworld. Now, Chu Xiu's mental strength had even surpassed most of the martial arts masters. Against 3-5 Chi's Unification Realm martial artists, it was simply a one-sided battle. In an instant, the 3 Chunyang Dao sect martial artists were bleeding from their 7 apertures. The pure yang qi that protected their bodies didn't even have the slightest bit of resistance before their bodies were penetrated by the powerful mental strength. The 3 Chunyang Dao sect martial artists laid on the ground. They didn't even have the chance to let out a cry. This scene made everyone's heart turn cold. First, they were shocked by Lin Ye's demonic killing method. Historically, mental attacks were the hardest to defend against. Primordial spirit secret techniques were still a minority in the pugilistic world. However, once it was cultivated to perfection, its power would be extremely terrifying, just like Nansang's Xiahou clan. Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique was simple and direct with overbearing power. However, Lin Ye's primordial spirit secret technique had a strong demonic color and was extremely demonic. The second thing that shocked them was Lin Ye's way of doing things. He was simply unscrupulous and overbearing to the extreme. In recent years, diabolism had been on the decline. Everyone had always heard of heroes from the righteous path killing demons and being praised by the people of the pugilistic world. It was rare to hear of outstanding disciples from sects being killed by diabolism. It seemed that apart from the overbearing power displayed by moon-worshipping cult during the Battle of Mount Floating Jade, diabolism rarely showed such unyielding strength. In the end, Chu Xiu killed 3 outstanding disciples of the pure Yang Daoist sect's younger generation without hesitation. He was very decisive. The last outstanding disciple from Chunyang Dao sect who had reached the oneness of heaven and man realm was killed by Li Feilian with 2 slashes. This time, Zhen Yangzi brought another 4 young disciples with him to oneness of heaven and man realm. After oneness of heaven and man realm, 1 or 2 of them would have reached the oneness of heaven and man realm. In the end, 3 of the 4 people were killed by Lin Yi. Chunyang Dao sect was probably going to vomit blood this time. Seeing the 3 disciples of Chunyang Dao sect being killed in front of him, Daoist Guangning's eyes revealed a hint of anger. Dao sect was like birds of a feather. The 3 of them were the younger generation of Dao sect. In the end, they were killed in front of him. Regardless of whether it was right or wrong, Daoist Guangning obviously couldn't stay silent. Seeing Daoist Guangning's action, Chu Xiu's hand held onto the hatred blade behind his back and said plainly, Daoist Guangning, everything in this world has to be reasonable. If you were to find a way out of this embarrassing situation, I would give you face. However, these 3 idiots have already made their decision. What do you want me to do? Now that I've killed them, if Dao sect wants to find trouble with me, I'll take them on. To put it bluntly, I've fought with more than 1 or 2 martial arts grandmasters. Some people who had participated in the Black Demon Tower immediately thought of the previous battle. The head of Dharma Institute, Su Xing, was severely injured by the 7 strange demonic blades behind Lin Yi. Nobody present knew the price of using the 7 demonic blades. In their opinion, Chu Xiu's deterrence was basically the same as a martial arts grandmaster. Just when the situation was tense, Huangfu Weiming pulled Daoist Guangning's hand and said in a deep voice, Daoist Guangning, don't be impulsive. You also said that we're not here to slay demons and defend justice after entering Xiaofan heaven. The people of Chunyang Dao sect were courting death. You've already done your best. Do you want to get yourself involved now? Listen to my advice and let this matter go. Lin Yi is an outstanding figure cultivated by the Yinma clan. Don't treat him as an ordinary junior. You know Su Xing's strength. His Vajra Buddha flame suppresses demons and punishes evil. It's more powerful for martial artists who practice demonic techniques. However, Su Xing was seriously injured by this kid's demonic blades. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about your true martial sect. Once something happens to you in Xiaofan heaven, the two young people of your true martial sect will have no backing. Yu Qifeng didn't add fuel to the fire this time. He just comforted him, that's right. Old Daoist, you have to calm down. Even if you really want to attack that kid, there's still a chance later. Don't be in a hurry. Of course, Huangfu Weiming and Yu Qifeng weren't so kind. Everything was for Daoist Guangning's sake. They stopped Daoist Guangning because they were afraid that Daoist Guangning and Lin Yi would really fight. Without anyone to break the formation, they wouldn't be able to enter the valley. A place that was able to preserve such a complete formation during the ancient Great Calamity would definitely have a lot of good stuff. Daoist Guangning wasn't a member of Chunyang Dao sect. He was still willing to listen to advice. In the end, Daoist Guangning let go of the hand that was holding the Dao sword. He turned around and went to break the formation without saying a word. Everyone present heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this scene. After all, now that Daoist Guangning had opened the formation, they could still go in and get some benefits. If Daoist Guangning and Lin Yi were to fight to the death, they could only watch the show. They wouldn't even get any benefits. Only LV Fengxian secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Brother Chu was a little too aggressive. It seemed that after he revealed his identity as a devil cultivator, his way of doing things had become closer to the devil cultivators. No, it should be said that he was even more radical than the devil cultivators. Daoist Guangning turned around and continued to break the formation. After about an hour, the formation in front of the valley let out a soft sound. Instantly, rays of light shone brightly. Everyone's eyes lit up. The formation was broken. As the formation was broken, there were some changes at the entrance of the valley. The entire entrance became like a layer of ripples on the surface of the water. Daoist Guangning was the first to reach out his hand and directly passed through the ripples. There wasn't any abnormality. Therefore, he directly stepped into the ripples on the surface of the water. Upon seeing this, Yu Qifeng and the rest also followed suit. After the ripples on the surface of the water, a fragrant aroma assaulted their faces. What appeared in front of everyone was a scene of birds chirping and flowers fragrant. It was as beautiful as a paradise. Chapter 560. Most of the scenes in Xiaofan heaven were extremely dilapidated, just like the spirit treasure temple that Chu Xiu had been to before and the Black Demon Tower. They were all dilapidated beyond recognition. However, the valley in front of them was extremely well preserved. There was a small bridge and flowing water, birds were chirping, and flowers were fragrant. It was simply like a fairyland. However, there were layers of mist in the valley, which made it difficult for them to see what was in front of them. However, they could still see the pavilions and towers in the distance. Everyone immediately became spirited. Such a well-preserved relic was extremely rare in Xiaofan heaven. The more well-preserved it was, the more benefits it had. They had picked up a treasure this time. Everyone thought so and also walked into the valley. What came into view was a small bridge and a small river that was only a few meters wide. However, the river was a bit muddy, and they couldn't see what was in it. The small bridge was extremely exquisite, and it was covered with all kinds of runes. There was also a big stone beside the bridge. Guangning, who was walking at the front, stared at the runes on the bridge and frowned. He didn't continue to walk forward. Yu Qifeng and Huangfu Wei knew that Guangning must have discovered something, so they didn't urge him. However, the small bridge was a bit too exquisite. It could only accommodate one person at a time, so it was a bit crowded for two people. Therefore, although the martial artists at the back were anxious, they didn't dare to let the three people in front of them pass first. Chu Xiu had the ability to do so. He secretly used the heaven sun gazing at air technique and looked at the small bridge and river. His eyes were suddenly filled with a strange color. He didn't move, but just stood behind the three people obediently. However, some of the people present couldn't wait any longer. The small river was only a few meters wide. For an expert of the unity of heaven and man realm, they could cross it with a single leap. Therefore, one of the martial artists couldn't help but move his body and directly cross to the other side of the river. However, just as his body reached the middle of the river, there was a sudden change. The originally muddy river had now turned into an evil yellowish-brown color. It was greasy like a slurry, emitting a nauseating smell. Some of the people present had smelled it before. It was the stench of a corpse. No one dared to imagine what the yellow-brown river water was that carried the stench of corpses. What was truly frightening was that whirlpools suddenly appeared in the river water, and more than 10 evil spirits surged out of the river water. Their faces were ashen, as if they had been starved for hundreds of years, leaving only a layer of skin on their skeletons. Their bodies were slightly transparent and covered in the yellowish-brown corpse fluid. One could even see their pitch-black bones through their transparent bodies. No matter how much the one with the heaven realm martial artist released his gang chi, it was useless. In less than a breath's time, he was entangled by these evil things and then dragged into the yellowish-brown corpse river. The corpse water surged, and the martial artist howled miserably. His body was corroded and melted by the corpse water, becoming transparent. However, the bones inside had yet to turn black, but his appearance was already exactly the same as those evil spirits. After a while, the martial artist was completely assimilated and sank into the water along with those evil spirits. The yellowish-brown corpse water was hidden under the surface of the river, and the entire river became the same as before. It was slightly muddy, but it was incomparably calm. However, everyone present took a step back in unison, and their eyes revealed incomparable horror. Under the seemingly calm surface of the river, there were such evil spirits and evil spirits hidden. 90% of the people present were from large aristocratic families or sections. They were all people who had seen the world. They had seen spirit beasts, fierce beasts, and all kinds of incomparably evil things. However, just like the river in front of them, there were some evil spirits and evil spirits inside. What was this thing? Chu Xiu was silent at the side. In fact, when he used the heaven sun gazing at air to check just now, he had already discovered that something was wrong. There was a formation in the middle of the river, so even if Chu Xiu used the heaven sun gazing at air, he could not see the detailed scene inside. However, Chu Xiu could see that there were very powerful negative emotions and extremely dense mental strength hidden in the river, so he was cautious and did not make a move. Yu Qifeng said with a solemn expression, "Old Daoist, what are these evil spirits?" Even Yu Qifeng was afraid of the scene just now. He could not see through the details of those vengeful spirits and evil spirits at all. However, the mental fluctuations revealed by some of the vengeful spirits and evil spirits were not inferior to a martial Dao Grand Master. Daoist Guangning said in a deep voice, "Have you heard of the underworld water and the bridge of helplessness?" Yu Qifeng was shocked, and his voice changed. "What did you say? This river is the underworld water, and this bridge is the bridge of helplessness? Could it be that we are in the underworld?" Everyone present felt a chill down their spine after hearing this. This kind of thing that only existed in legends suddenly appeared in front of you. Even a martial Dao master like Yu Qifeng could not remain calm. Daoist Guangning rolled his eyes at him and said, "Don't be so surprised, I only asked if you have heard of it. Who told you that this is the underworld water and the bridge of helplessness?" Yu Qifeng said angrily, "If not, then why are you asking?" Daoist Guangning said in a deep voice, "Although this place is not the underworld water and the bridge of helplessness, it is an imitation of the legendary underworld water and the bridge of helplessness. There are countless evil corpse energies in the river, and there is also a formation set up. As long as someone falls into the river, they will immediately be sucked dry by the underworld water that is filled with corpse energies. At the same time, their mental strength will not dissipate, but will attach to the remaining body and be assimilated into this evil spirit. I have never heard of this kind of evil formation. In the entire river, only the small bridge is engraved with the antidote rune, so it is safe. Yuchi Feng suddenly understood. He suddenly pointed at the stone and said, "Then this stone is the 3 lives stone?" Daoist Guangning nodded and said, "Logically speaking, it should be, but this should be a strange treasure. It was refined by a master blacksmith and some strange methods of divination master. Combined with the rune power of the Bridge of Helplessness, it can calculate the origin of a person's past life, but it should be impossible to calculate the future. Even if a powerful divination master were to calculate the future, even a small matter would consume their blood, sweat, and lifespan. This is only an artifact that was refined by someone. It can only be seen for fun, don't take it seriously." As he said this, Daoist Guangning took the initiative to walk over and put his hand on the 3 lives stone. Instantly, a faint light enveloped it, but after a moment, it disappeared. Yuchi Feng asked doubtfully, "Old Daoist, what did you see?" Daoist Guangning smiled and shook his head. "As expected, I can't see the future, but I saw a monk. Could it be that I was a monk in my past life?" Although Taoism and Buddhism were both orthodox sects, Taoism and Buddhism were not on the same side. Even Daoist Guangning, who was a good person, didn't have a good expression when he saw the monks from the Great Light Temple. His attitude was even worse than Chu Xiu, who was a martial artist from the demonic path. It could be imagined how great the hatred between Taoism and Buddhism was. Without the threat of the demonic Tao, the conflicts between Daoist and Buddhism were the most frequent. Therefore, if this Daoist Guangning was really a monk in his past life, then it would be interesting. However, Daoist Guangning said that this thing was only an artifact and shouldn't be taken seriously. After all, no one dared to say that they completely believed in the future of their past life and reincarnation. Yuchi Feng also went over to touch the stone, but then he shook his head and said, "This thing is really not accurate. How could I be a scholar in my past life?" After saying that, he followed Daoist Guangning onto the Bridge of Helplessness and walked to the other side of the river. The people behind him also stepped in one after another and touched the 3 lives stone along the way. It didn't matter if this thing was accurate or not, it was always fun to look at it. When it was Lu Fengxian's turn, his expression was a little weird. Luo Feiheng asked curiously, "Brother Lu, who did you see?" Lu Fengxian scratched his head and said, "I saw myself. I was holding the unparalleled divine weapon and wearing battle armor. However, I couldn't see my face clearly." Luo Feiheng rolled his eyes and said, "That's not right. I feel that the person you saw should be Marquis Lu. Didn't everyone say that you are the reincarnation of Marquis Lu? Maybe you were really Marquis Lu in your past life?" Lu Fengxian shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know either. One had to know that he personally saw Marquis Lu's true soul shatter and fuse with his body. If he was Marquis Lu in his past life, then who was the true soul fragment that fused with his body? Lu Fengxian didn't care about this kind of thing. However, when Luo Feiheng finished touching the 3 lives stone, her face was a little red. Lu Fengxian asked curiously, "Who was your past life?" Luo Feiheng didn't say anything, he only pushed Lu Fengxian and said with slight anger, "Why are you asking so much? Don't you know that some women's secrets can't be said? Let's go, don't waste time." Seeing Luo Feiheng's expression, Lu Fengxian became even more curious. However, his personality was indifferent. Since Luo Feiheng didn't want to say, he didn't ask. Chu Xiu followed behind Lu Fengxian and stepped onto the Bridge of Helplessness. The others were very interested in the 3 lives stone, but Chu Xiu didn't really care about it. The others didn't know who they were in their past lives, but Chu Xiu knew. However, when he walked to the 3 lives stone, Chu Xiu also touched it subconsciously. In an instant, a faint light enveloped Chu Xiu. However, what appeared in front of him wasn't what he expected. It wasn't the appearance of his past life. It wasn't the appearance of anything else, but nothing. What appeared in front of Chu Xiu was an empty space. It was a complete void. This made Chu Xiu feel a little strange. Regardless of whether it was real or fake, why did all kinds of people appear when other people touched the three live stone, but he didn't? Was it because he had transmigrated? However, Chu Xiu didn't pay too much attention to this matter. However, when the others behind saw that Chu Xiu had stopped for a long time, they were quite dissatisfied and secretly discussed. Of course, they only dared to discuss in secret. Chu Xiu didn't care about it and turned around to leave. However, when he turned around, a crack appeared on the three live stone, and it instantly lost all its spiritual energy. Chapter 561. Chu Xiu was stunned by the sudden crack of the three live stone. The warriors at the back thought that Chu Xiu had secretly done something to the three live stone because of their previous discussion. Due to Chu Xiu's previous power, they didn't dare to say anything. However, they were secretly muttering, "This guy from the demonic path is really stingy. It seems that we have to be careful of Lin Yi in the future. We must not speak ill of him in front of him." Chu Xiu frowned. He didn't see anything on the three live stone. However, the three live stone suddenly cracked after he finished looking at it. This strange thing made Chu Xiu feel a little uncomfortable. However, it wasn't the time to think about this. It was more important to get some benefits in the Xiaofan heaven. Guangning and the others who were at the front walked very slowly. The others at the back didn't dare to rush either. They were afraid that they would encounter some evil things. Previously, they thought that this place was a paradise with birds chirping and flowers fragrant. It must be the residence of a big righteous sect. However, when they saw the strangeness of the underworld and walked across the bridge of helplessness, they completely threw this thought to the back of their minds. How could this be a secluded big righteous sect? It was clearly an evil devil's den. Everyone continued to move forward, and the pavilions that were previously hidden in the mist appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Previously, they felt that these pavilions that were hidden in the fog had a trace of immortal aura. However, they could only feel a dense ghostly aura now. What appeared before everyone's eyes was a large expanse of complete buildings. Although all of the buildings were incomparably grand, the outer layer was painted pitch black. Moreover, there were strange runes engraved on the exterior of the buildings, giving off a feeling of irritation. On top of the main hall at the front, there were 4 big words written on a white plaque: Blissful Devil Palace. Guangning frowned. He was experienced and knowledgeable. There were many ancient books in the true martial arts sect. However, he had never heard of this Blissful Devil Palace. However, looking at the scale of the ruins, the powerful formation and the evil underworld water bridge of helplessness, this Blissful Devil Palace must be a top demonic sect in ancient times. Yu Qifeng led the way. He pushed open the palace door. His sharp white tiger baleful god power was exerted to the extreme. His entire body seemed like a weapon. The door was pushed open. There wasn't any danger inside. However, the scene inside was somewhat beyond everyone's imagination. The hall that looked neat and tidy on the outside was in a mess on the inside. All kinds of chairs were scattered on the ground, and at the center of the hall, there should have been something like a statue. However, it had already been moved away, leaving only a mark. Everyone present looked at each other. They had a strange feeling. It was as if the people of the Blissful Demon Palace had left in a hurry. They could even tell from these traces that the warriors of the Blissful Demon Palace had been in a panic 10,000 years ago. It was as if they would have lost their lives if they had been a second slower. There were simply too many things that had been moved out of the main hall. The floor was a mess, and there were many things in a mess. Everyone searched for a while. They didn't find anything valuable. So, they continued to explore. Behind the main hall was a large number of pavilions and palaces. Usually, These places were where the disciples of the blissful Devil Palace stayed in seclusion, as well as their residences. Even the armory and pill store were located here. In fact, this area was the most precious place in the entire blissful Devil Palace. However, when everyone stepped into this area, they felt that the fog here was thicker than the underworld bridge. They couldn't even see their faces clearly. Fortunately, although everyone's perception was somewhat suppressed, it wasn't too serious. Daoist Guangning frowned and said, "Everyone, be careful." The blissful Devil Palace's warriors left very strangely. They were in a hurry. So, they didn't close some of the formations. They didn't take some of the things with them. It's best not to touch the things here before you have the confidence. Otherwise, once the formations are activated, it won't be fun. You'll only harm yourself and others. Daoist Guangning was doing this for their own good. These ancient arrays were originally very evil, especially this extreme bliss Devil Palace. Even he had to be careful around it. However, the others didn't think so. To them, they were already at a disadvantage when competing with Daoist Guangning and the other martial masters. They could only get a little bit of soup. If they took the initiative and left after getting a treasure, it would be worth it. Although there were risks, they knew the principle of seeking riches amidst danger. Everyone was afraid of death. But in the face of benefits, they weren't afraid of death. If they were all extremely cautious and fearful, they wouldn't have been able to cultivate to their current level. Looking at the others' expressions, Daoist Guangning couldn't help but shake his head. Yu Qifeng sneered, "Old Daoist, why do you care about them? They're courting death. You can't stop them. If something really happens, let their sect feel sorry for them. It's not your turn to feel sorry for them." Daoist Guangning didn't say anything. He carefully explored the place. As he walked, Daoist Guangning frowned. This blissful Devil Palace is a bit strange. The formations are too intact. Huangfu Weiming said, since this blissful Devil Palace was a great demonic sect in the past, they should have some foundation. It's normal for them to survive in the calamity of the world. Daoist Guangning shook his head, "That's what I thought in the beginning. But soon, I realized something was wrong. Look at the situation in the hall. Those disciples of blissful Devil Palace left in a hurry. Obviously, the situation has reached a critical moment. That's why a great demonic sect was so flustered. If the blissful Demon Palace's formation was really so powerful that it could withstand the great tribulation of heaven and earth, then why did the disciples of the blissful Demon Palace flee in such a hurry? Wasn't it better for them to stay in the formation? This is actually the third time I've entered the minor mortal world. I've explored a few ruins in the minor mortal world. All of them had different degrees of damage. I couldn't find a ruin that wasn't damaged at all. There must be something wrong with this abnormal situation. Anyway, this blissful Devil Palace doesn't seem right to me. Very wrong." Right at this moment, a soft exclamation came from the crowd. Everyone was startled and turned to look in that direction. A 5-cheese origin realm martial artist said helplessly, "My senior brother isn't here. He was behind me just now." But as he walked, he disappeared. There were about 70 to 80 people who entered the valley. It could be seen at a glance. At this time, everyone suddenly looked around and found that there were more than 10 people missing in their midst. However, the identities of the warriors present were a little too complicated. There were people from various sects and clans. Therefore, even though some people were missing from the crowd didn't really care. They thought that these people didn't listen to Daoist Guangning's advice and went off to act alone. Only when this martial artist's senior brother disappeared did the crowd feel that something was wrong. Something must have gone wrong. But at this moment, a chewing sound came from the fog. Everyone shuddered when they heard it. A black shadow quickly flashed through the fog. In an instant, a warrior screamed miserably, and his figure instantly disappeared into the fog. Everyone was shocked. Daoist Guangning yelled, "Pay attention to the surroundings." Just as he finished speaking, dozens of black shadows attacked them from the fog. Their speed was so fast that even the Union of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists could barely see their silhouettes. Faced with this kind of attack, Yuchi Feng snorted coldly. The white tiger baleful divine wind around his body exploded. A figure crashed into his body and was immediately minced into a cloud of black and purple bloody mist by the incomparably sharp and powerful Gang Qi. It seemed somewhat disgusting. Daoist Guangning swung the horsetail whisk in his hand. It seemed to be a casual move, but it directly flung away several of those figures. Only Huangfu Weiming's strength was slightly weaker. But no matter how weak he was still a martial arts grandmaster. The attacks of those figures were a great threat to the Five Qis unification of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists. They were slightly weaker to the unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists. But when facing a martial arts grandmaster, they didn't pose a threat at all. And when Chu Xiu faced these things, he had to occupy a greater advantage. What Chu Xiu was least afraid of were fast things. When the heaven sun gazing at air technique was used, the speed of those black shadows was simply extremely slow in his eyes. Boundless demonic energy exploded in his hand. Chu Xiu directly grabbed the black shadow in his hand. But when he saw that thing, even Chu Xiu was shocked. It was a humanoid thing that was only half the height of a normal person. It was called a thing because although it had a humanoid shape, it didn't look like a human. That thing had sharp claws on its hands and feet, but its head was one size bigger than a normal person. Its belly was even bigger than its head. They looked ferocious, and their skin was shriveled to the point that only a layer of skin was left. There were sharp teeth in their mouths, but their eyes revealed a crazy bloodthirsty intent. There was not a single trace of blood in them. The strangest thing was on their heads. The skin there was actually transparent, and there was a drop of pitch-black liquid in their heads, which was very conspicuous. This thing actually looked very similar to the hungry ghost of the Hell Path in the legends. What exactly did those guys from the blissful demon palace refine? That thing was still struggling in Chu Xiu's hand. But at this moment, Chu Xiu's heart started to throb. The glazed golden thread goo was constantly releasing a thought, as if it was very eager for the thing in Chu Xiu's hand. Chapter 562. The glazed golden silk goo was a living creature, but no matter how strong it was only a goo worm. Therefore, it had no intelligence and only instincts. At this time, Chu Xiu could clearly sense the glazed golden silk goo's desire for this thing, but he did not know what it was longing for. Chu Xiu exerted force in his hand, wanting to crush this thing to death, but he did not succeed. Although this thing looked extremely thin and weak, its body was comparable to gold and iron, and it had a certain degree of resistance to Gang Qi. Demonic energy erupted, and the hungry ghost-like thing's neck was completely broken by Chu Xiu. However, it was not dead yet, and its body was still twitching. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and pointed with a finger. A powerful demonic energy condensed at one point, and directly smashed the thing's head. However, at this time, the black liquid in the thing's head involuntarily seeped into Chu Xiu's body, flowing along Chu Xiu's meridians and blood vessels, flowing into the glazed golden silk goo and being devoured. This situation was not initiated by Chu Xiu, but the glazed golden silk goo's passive behavior. Even Chu Xiu was shocked and wanted to stop it, but it was too late. The glazed golden silk goo was symbiotic with Chu Xiu's body, which was equivalent to a part of Chu Xiu's body. How could he stop his body's subconscious reaction? However, that drop of strange black liquid did not cause any harm to Chu Xiu. A part of its power was devoured by the glazed golden silk goo, causing the glazed golden silk goo's rhythm to become stronger. The remaining part of the power was integrated into Chu Xiu's spiritual power, which actually increased Chu Xiu's spiritual power. There was also an indescribable feeling that made Chu Xiu a little uncertain. However, there was one thing that Chu Xiu was sure of. Killing this thing and taking the black liquid in its head would be beneficial to the glazed golden silk goo and his spiritual power. At this moment, the demon-like thing pounced on them, causing some of the weaker cultivators to fall victim to its attacks. Daoist Guangning frowned and threw out an array disc. In an instant, the yin and yang powers rotated within the array disc. At the same time, a black and a white longsword fell into the array disc, triggering a surge of sword qi. Within a few hundred meters, the fog was dispersed, revealing an extremely horrifying scene. Outside the fog, a number of malevolent-looking evil spirits were desperately biting the corpses of the cultivators. There were even several evil spirits tearing at the same corpse. The entire scene was like hell. Even Yu Qifeng felt his scalp tingle when he saw this scene. He couldn't help but ask, "Old Taoist, what are these things? Is there a dire beast that looks like this?" Daoist Guangning's expression turned ugly. "Ferocious beast my ass. These things used to be people. What extreme bliss demon palace. It should be called Hell Demon Palace. These lunatics. They actually want to refine the evil spirits of the hungry ghost realm. I've read in some ancient books of the true martial sect that there was a devil who wreaked havoc in Jianghu in ancient times. He was called the demonic lord of 6 paths. He was a lunatic, the kind of lunatic who was truly insane. He actually imagined himself to have 6 personalities. Moreover, each personality was a genius in martial arts. He wanted to refine the incarnation of the 6 paths of reincarnation using a secret technique. Then, he would sever his soul into 6 parts and fuse them into the incarnation. For this, the demonic lord of 6 paths had killed countless people to conduct experiments. Among them, the incarnation of the hungry ghost realm looked like this. He would capture countless infants and place a formation on their bodies to gradually erase their consciousness. Then, he would feed them with elixirs every day. After their souls were erased, they would be like walking corpses with only their instincts left. Then, they would be thrown into a closed space without any food or water. They would be made to kill each other and feed on each other's flesh and blood. Finally, they would be raised like a poisonous insect. That would be the incarnation of the hungry ghost realm. I've seen the diagram in the ancient books. The incarnation of the hungry ghost realm looked like this. However, it was much larger than these things. It was also much more powerful. It was a real hungry ghost from hell. However, it was recorded in the ancient books that the demonic lord of 6 paths had been killed by many experts of Jianghu because of his inhumane behavior. I didn't expect that the people of the blissful devil palace had obtained this secret technique from somewhere. They were actually refining such inhumane things. Every hungry ghost here represented the lives of countless innocent infants. Even if these people were people from tens of thousands of years ago, Guangning still felt extremely angry about this matter. After hearing this, Chu Xiu also frowned. Although he had cultivated many demonic techniques, he wouldn't cultivate such inhumane demonic techniques. Demons existed between heaven and earth. Although orthodox demonic techniques represented the negative energy between heaven and earth, there would always be yin and yang in everything. Techniques were just a kind of attribute. Whether it was a righteous technique or a demonic technique, if you used it to save people, it would be good. If you used it to kill people, it would be evil. Any technique was inhumane. However, as long as the person who cultivated it was a human, there would still be a trace of humanity left. Currently, those famous demonic overlords in Jianghu, whether it was Dugu Weiwei who suppressed the world in the past, or the current cult master of moon-worshipping cult, Yi Shaonan, they had killed many people. However, what they killed were the lives of martial artists. There was no demonic overlord that became famous by slaughtering ordinary people. Such people were even despised by the demonic path itself. They couldn't be considered as demonic path anymore. They were more like demons. At this moment, Yuchi Feng looked at those hungry ghosts and frowned. These things have lived since ancient times. It has already been 10,000 years. Are they still alive? Enlightened Guangning frowned. I'm also puzzled about this. These things haven't completely devoured and evolved. In other words, they haven't truly become the incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao. In order to let them live after 10,000 years, it's possible to use some methods to make their souls hibernate. However, the people of Blissful Devil Palace have already left. Who made them hibernate? At this moment, a melodious flute sound suddenly resounded. The flute sound was mellow and melodious, but it was filled with boundless resentment. After listening to it, people couldn't help but feel upset. However, after those hungry ghosts heard the flute sound, they seemed to have received some kind of order. They quickly gathered together and didn't even care about eating the corpses anymore. In the dense fog, a white-clothed figure walked out. The white-clothed figure was actually a handsome young man. His hair was combed into a simple bun. He held an emerald green bamboo flute in his hand, and his skin was frighteningly pale. It was actually somewhat similar to the grayish-white skin of those hungry ghosts. The young man slowly walked over and gently touched the heads of those hungry ghosts. These evil monsters actually stood obediently by his side, appearing abnormally docile. Looking at the corpses on the ground that had already been devoured by the hungry ghosts, the young man's eyes instantly revealed a trace of surprise. He picked up a relatively intact arm, and the corner of his mouth suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. That smile, coupled with his handsome face, should have been a very sunny scene, but it gave people a kind of evil feeling. Picking up the severed arm and placing it in front of his eyes, the handsome young man suddenly opened his mouth. His mouth widened to an extremely evil and terrifying extent. Inside his mouth were neat teeth, but they were densely packed with sharp teeth like those of hungry ghosts. In an instant, the young man swallowed the entire arm into his stomach, letting out a series of disgusting chewing sounds. After a while, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and revealed a trace of an intoxicated expression on his face. With a slightly strange accent, he said, "The feeling of flesh and blood is so good. It's been 10,000 years, and I can finally taste flesh and blood again." Previously, everyone thought that this young man was a living person, and that he had used some kind of secret technique to survive from the ancient times until now. But now, it seemed that this guy was not a human at all, but clearly the strongest hungry ghost here. While controlling the yin-yang duality sword formation, Daoist Guangning asked in a deep voice, "What are you?" The young man rubbed his head and said, "Thing? I seem to have forgotten a lot of things. Old Daoist, you're a sensible person. You should know that hungry ghosts don't have divine souls or spiritual intelligence. They're completely like walking corpses. I spent a lot of effort to retain my spiritual intelligence after turning into a hungry ghost. Now, I can't remember many things, including my own name. I'm just a pitiful worm forgotten by the Blissful Devil Palace. I only remember that I'm responsible for feeding these disgusting guys." In the end, they all left. Master, Senior Marshal Uncle, Senior Marshal brothers and sisters all left. I was forgotten in this completely empty Blissful Devil Palace. In order to preserve my life, I could only take the initiative to turn myself into these guys that I usually feel disgusted by. It's been 10,000 years, I've been sleeping, waking up, and sleeping again. I've been mending the formation, mending the Blissful Devil Palace, waiting for Master and the others to return. Do you guys have any news about Master and the others? That young man looked at Daoist Guangning and the others with a sincere expression. His appearance didn't have the slightest hint of the evil and terrifying look he had just now. Everyone had more or less understood what was going on. This guy was indeed a pitiful worm. Everyone in the Blissful Devil Palace had already left before the ancient Great Calamity. In the end, no one knew if it was intentional or unintentional, but he was the only one left. In the end, in order to preserve his life, he actually turned himself into a hungry ghost from hell. As long as he was awake, he would mend the formation of the blissful devil palace. That was why this place looked so complete. Daoist Guangning looked at that young man and said coldly, "News? Your blissful devil palace has long been annihilated. How can there be any news? You guys actually dared to try refining an evil secret technique like the Hungry Ghost Path's incarnation. It's simply intolerable for the blissful devil palace to not die in the ancient great calamity." That young man sighed in disappointment. "Oh, so that's how it is." As soon as he finished speaking, waves of black gas with the stench of corpses appeared around him. Even the 3 martial Dao masters present felt a chill run down their spines when they sensed the aura. "If that's the case, then you guys are useless. Just obediently become my blood food. I'll be very gentle when I eat you guys. I won't be as dirty as those ugly things." Chapter 563. There were many dangers in Xiaofan Heaven, but for those who had already understood most of the rules of the ruins in Xiaofan Heaven, the real danger in Xiaofan Heaven wasn't the ruins that were already broken, but the warriors who entered Xiaofan Heaven with them. In the past, the most dangerous things in Xiaofan Heaven were only the remnants of the broken arrays from the great calamity of heaven and earth. Their lethality was limited, and the people who died in the hands of the same people would definitely be more than those who died in these arrays. In the end, who would have thought that they would be so unlucky this time and enter such a devil's den? Before they even saw the item, more than 10 people had already died. At this moment, the young man's body was completely shrouded by corpse energy. The nails on his hands rapidly grew to a few feet long, like sharp swords. At the same time, his appearance had already begun to distort, and his eyes were glowing with red light. At this moment, he was even more terrifying than those malicious ghosts. A shrill howl resounded, and the young man directly pounced towards Daoist Guangning and the others. His speed was even faster than those ordinary hungry ghosts by a few times. It was as though he had teleported, and in the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of the 3 of them. Daoist Guangning's hands formed a sword finger, and the yin-yang dual pole Dao sword transformed into Taiji sword Qi. However, as the young man waved his sharp claws, the sword Qi was actually torn apart in an instant. Huangfu Weiming, who was behind Daoist Guangning, formed a seal with his hands, and boundless Gang Qi condensed into a huge seal the size of a small mountain. It fell with a loud bang, suppressing the heaven and earth, and its power was majestic and shocking. However, the young man who had transformed into a hungry ghost was shockingly strong. He didn't have any Gang Qi, but he relied on his own strength to forcefully smash the huge seal made of Gang Qi. Demon, die. Yuqi Feng was the last to make a move. The white tiger baleful god shield condensed into a huge blade, and with incomparable sharpness and killing intent, it slashed down with a loud bang. In the end, the young man was slashed by Yuqi Feng, and flew over 100 feet away. However, Yuqi Feng's blade only left a tear on his clothes, and revealed the grayish-white skin underneath. However, there was only a mark on it, and there wasn't even a wound. Seeing this scene, the expressions of Daoist Guangning and the others changed. Among the 3 of them, Daoist Guangning was the strongest in terms of cultivation accumulation. However, in terms of pure destructive power, Yuqi Feng was the strongest. The White Tiger Hall's White Tiger Baleful Divinity Force was renowned in the world. It condensed the strength of the Western White Tiger, Eugene, and it was incomparably sharp. At the same time, it drew in killing intent and baleful qi into it, adding 30% to its might. It was said that when the White Tiger Baleful Divine Wind was cultivated to its peak, it could even go head-on against a divine weapon. In the end, Yuqi Feng's saber had only left a white mark on the young man who had transformed into a hungry ghost. Just how strong was this fellow's defensive power? However, at this moment, it was already not their turn to sigh. That ravenous ghost-like young man was once again surrounded by black corpse chi as he roared and charged towards them. For a moment, Daoist Guang Ning and the other two could only barely withstand the attack of that ravenous ghost-like young man. Not only was the opponent's physical body strong, the corpse aura surrounding his body was also poisonous. It even had the effect of corroding other people's gang chi. Therefore, the more they fought, the worse the state of Daoist Guang Ning and the other two became. At this moment, the other hungry ghosts also pounced forward and fought with the crowd. Everyone present was instantly caught in a bitter battle. But while the others were fighting bitterly, Chu Xiu's eyes lit up. The demonic chi around his body erupted to the extreme. When he saw a hungry ghost, he directly smashed its head with a punch. That black liquid then fused into Chu Xiu's body and was first devoured by the glazed golden thread goo. Then, a portion of the power was used to strengthen Chu Xiu's mental strength. No matter how hard the bodies of these hungry ghosts were, they couldn't compare to Chu Xiu's physical body, which cultivated the great Vajra divine strength and the nine heavens fiend golden body. His strength erupted to the extreme. It was very easy for him to kill one with a punch. After Chu Xiu had killed all the hungry ghosts around him, his gaze turned towards the others. These hungry ghosts had amazing defense and were extremely difficult to deal with. Unless one had explosive strength like Chu Xiu, even a martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm would find it difficult to cause harm to them. Therefore, most of the people present were having a hard time, and it was the same for Lu Fengxian's side. Actually, with Lu Fengxian's strength, it wasn't a problem for her to deal with these hungry ghosts. It was just that with Luo Feiheng's strength, it would be difficult for Luo Feiheng to deal with these hungry ghosts alone. Moreover, Lu Fengxian still had to take care of Luo Feiheng, which was somewhat taxing. Chu Xiu's figure moved, but he didn't directly help Lu Fengxian. Instead, he first killed all the hungry ghosts around Lu Fengxian and then went to help Lu Fengxian. After killing those hungry ghosts, Chu Xiu only exchanged a glance with Lu Fengxian and then continued to kill other hungry ghosts. Luo Feiheng held the blood spear red kite in her hand and asked curiously, "This guy from the Devil Dao is actually helping us?" Lu Fengxian smiled and said, "Some people from the Devil Dao don't kill innocent people, and some people from the righteous Dao don't do chivalry." Luo Feiheng nodded. She had been in the underworld for a long time, so she naturally knew this principle. At this moment, the others also felt very strange. They thought to themselves, did Lin Ye's character change? They still remembered the scene of Lin Yi ruthlessly killing the 3 disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect. He didn't show any mercy and was extremely ruthless. In the end, he actually took the initiative to help them. Was there anything more strange than this in the world? Although the people present couldn't understand, they naturally couldn't fall behind when they saw that Lin Yi had helped them kill the hungry ghosts. If they couldn't kill them alone, they would kill them together. However, their actions made Chu Xiu very unhappy. Those hungry ghosts had to be killed as soon as possible in order to absorb the black liquid. If they were too late, the black liquid would immediately evaporate. Therefore, these people's actions seemed to be helping, but in fact, they were harming his interests. "All of you, get lost!" Chu Xiu shouted angrily at the few warriors who were besieging a hungry ghost, causing them to be stunned. "We're helping you reduce your burden, but you're scolding us here. Is Lin Yi crazy?" Seeing that these people didn't stop, Chu Xiu directly punched with a vast and majestic demonic aura. The powerful punch had a bit of the charm of Qinqingdi's one punch to break all things. It directly included the few people present and the hungry ghost in his attack range. When everyone present saw this scene, they all cursed inwardly at Chu Xiu for being a lunatic. They all dodged, allowing Chu Xiu to smash the hungry ghost into pieces. After killing dozens of such hungry ghosts in succession, Chu Xiu's mental strength had skyrocketed. It could be said that it far surpassed 90% of the martial Dao masters in the underworld. However, although his mental strength had skyrocketed, Chu Xiu discovered a problem. The mental strength he obtained by killing these hungry ghosts did not actually merge with his original mental strength. Instead, it existed in his primordial spirit alone. It was not transparent, but black-gray. It even dyed Chu Xiu's primordial spirit black. However, this black mental strength was no different from the mental strength that Chu Xiu cultivated himself, and there were no side effects. However, Chu Xiu had a feeling that this mental strength should have another use, but he had not figured it out yet. At this time, the glazed golden silk goo attached to Chu Xiu's heart had also undergone some changes. After devouring the black liquid, the glazed golden silk goo's body had grown a size. Originally, the appearance of the glazed golden silk goo was just a slightly cute and chubby golden silkworm. However, there was a black line on the back of the golden silkworm, giving it a slightly evil feeling. However, the glazed golden silk goo's strength was clearly growing. At this moment, the glazed golden silk goo also released a rhythm, pointing at the hungry ghost youth. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. He knew what the glazed golden thread goo wanted to do, but to kill the young man who had turned into a hungry ghost and devour the black juice in his brain, that was a little difficult. The strength of the hungry ghost youth was not low previously. His initial estimation was that he was an expert who condensed the martial Dao true core. Now that he had turned into a hungry ghost, his body's defense was extremely shocking. He could even block the white tiger deity wind. It would be very difficult for him to kill him. Most importantly, Daoist Guangning and the other two were working together to besiege him. If Chu Xiu wanted to seize the initiative and kill him, it would be quite difficult. However, Chu Xiu could not care about other things for the time being. He directly rushed towards the hungry ghost youth and said, "Guys, let me help you." Previously, Daoist Guangning and the other two had already noticed that Chu Xiu had helped everyone to kill the hungry ghost. They were also somewhat puzzled about what Lin Yi was thinking. However, they were having a hard time fighting here, so they did not have the time to care so much. But now, Lin Yi actually came to help them. This action was really puzzling to everyone present. If it wasn't for Lin Ye's ruthlessness and decisiveness when he killed the 3 Chunyang Dao sect disciples, they might really believe that although Lin Yi was from the demonic path, he was somewhat kind-hearted. But now, they all thought that Lin Ye's behavior was definitely strange, but they did not refuse. The hungry ghost youth was very difficult to deal with. On the other hand, Lin Ye's strength was obvious. His explosive power was already comparable to a martial Dao Grand Master, so he could share some of the pressure. When Chu Xiu went forward to fight with the hungry ghost youth, he felt that the other party was difficult to deal with. With a punch, he could only push the other party back a few steps. The powerful prison-guarding Wisdom King form landed, but it was forcibly torn apart by the other party. It did not have any effect at all. After fighting for a long time, Yuchi Feng could not help but say, "I say, kid, if you don't use the 7 sabers behind you now, when will you use them? Aren't those 7 sabers divine weapons? This guy's physical defense is amazing. He can defend against precious weapons, but I don't believe that he can also defend against divine weapons. If you don't want to use them, then give them to me and let me use them." Chapter 564. Yu Qifeng seemed to be a straightforward person, but in fact, he was full of schemes. The 7 sabers on Chu Xiu's back were said to be divine weapons that had once injured Su Xing. Yu Qifeng had long been curious about them. At this moment, he also wanted to see how powerful these divine weapons were and whether they were real or fake. However, Yu Qifeng was cunning, and Chu Xiu was not stupid. He laughed coldly and said, "Senior Yuchi, have you not heard of the principle of not showing off important weapons? These 7 sabers are my trump cards. If I were to face this thing alone, I would use my sabers. However, now that the 4 of us are attacking together, everyone has a trump card that they haven't used yet. Is it appropriate for a junior like me to use my trump card first?" Yu Qifeng chuckled and did not say anything else. If he continued, he would really think that Chu Xiu was an idiot. Even with 4 against 1, they still could not subdue the ravenous ghost youth. At this moment, Chu Xiu's mental energy suddenly exploded, and he used the soul-calming Hades song. The sound of the zither went straight for the ravenous ghost youth. Amidst the soul-calming music, the ravenous ghost youth's eyes shone with red light. He pounced towards Chu Xiu like a madman, but his speed was much slower. Seeing this, Chu Xiu was immediately shocked. This thing was actually afraid of Essence Soul's secret techniques. Actually, Chu Xiu did not use Essence Soul's secret techniques at the beginning, because Essence Soul's secret techniques were only effective against people. For example, this ravenous ghost youth had already become a half-human half-ghost existence. Chu Xiu was also not sure if Essence Soul's secret techniques would be effective against him, so he did not waste his mental energy from the beginning. Unexpectedly, the effect of using Essence Soul's secret techniques was better than Chu Xiu had imagined. Seeing this, Chu Xiu hurriedly said, "The 3 of you, as long as you help me hold this guy back, I am confident that I can use Essence Soul's secret techniques to kill him." Daoist Guangning and the other 2 looked at each other and nodded. Right now, the 4 of them were working together, but Lin Yi was actually the only one who was proficient in Essence Soul's secret techniques, and they were indeed very powerful. Other than that, there was no other way for the time being. Moreover, with the 3 of them present, Lin Yi could forget about playing any tricks. Therefore, when Daoist Guangning and the other 2 heard the command, they immediately used their full strength to stop the young man who had turned into a hungry ghost. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands, casting the Heart Demon Rotation Grand Technique and the Soul Extinguishing Grand Technique to the extreme at the same time. Boundless illusions enveloped the hungry ghost youth. Just as Chu Xiu was about to set up the killing formation in the illusory realm, the black mental energy that he had absorbed before suddenly moved. It actually sucked Chu Xiu's own mental energy into the illusory realm. In that instant, Chu Xiu's expression changed abruptly. However, the evolution of his mental strength was too fast. With just a thought, the illusion had already been laid down. Similarly, Chu Xiu had no time to resist. In an instant, he was already in the illusion. The illusion was laid down by Chu Xiu, but now that he was in the illusion, Chu Xiu felt very unfamiliar. Surrounding him were palaces, green trees and flowers, looking extremely beautiful. Chu Xiu took a closer look. Wasn't this the current appearance of the blissful demon palace? It was just that there weren't any flowers or trees. The young man from before came out of one of the palaces with a bamboo flute in his hand. At this moment, he no longer had the ferocious look of a hungry ghost. There was a gentle smile on his face, and even his skin color had returned to normal. Chu Xiu looked at the young man coldly and frowned. "You're the one who pulled me into the illusion? I've underestimated you." The young man shook his head and said, "I wasn't the one who pulled you in, but you yourself. Because you've devoured too many hungry ghost spirits, and those spirits are from the same source as me, that's why you're here. The art of heart demon rotation you cultivate is actually a secret cultivation method of the blissful demon palace. A few hundred years ago, I can't remember when it was, but at that time, there was also a demonic cultivator who came here and took the art of heart demon rotation from the armory in front of me. He didn't seem to be interested in the other cultivation methods, so he didn't take them. That person cultivated a variety of cultivation methods, very similar to you. Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic, all of them. He was so powerful that it made people tremble. Even in my era, he was an expert who stood at the peak." Chu Xiu's heart stirred, and he said, "That person was Dugu Weiwei?" Mei Qinglian had once said that Dugu Weiwei had also entered the Xiaofan heaven and obtained many benefits from it, creating a peerless demonic cultivation method. After the great calamity of the ancient era, there were quite a few powerful figures of the demonic Tao. However, other than Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu couldn't think of anyone else who could be considered a peak expert even in the ancient era. The young man smiled bitterly and shook his head. When that expert came, he didn't see my true self, but the hungry ghost version of me. I'm just a half-human half-ghost thing. How could I be qualified to talk to that expert? So I don't even know that expert's name. Looking at Chu Xiu, the young man said, "You don't have to be wary of me, I'm different from that demon outside. Moreover, since I've awakened, I don't intend to continue living. I just want to find someone to talk to before I die, and I'll give you some things while I'm at it." Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, "You're not the same person as the body outside? Who exactly are you?" The young man spread his hands and said, "I'm Yu Xian, a direct disciple of the Blissful Demon Palace. I'm also an anomaly of the Blissful Demon Palace, and even an abandoned disciple. As for that demon outside, he's indeed me, but also not me. Anyway, it's a long story." Looking at the surrounding palaces and pavilions, Yu Xian sighed, "The hungry ghost Dao's secret art is against the harmony of the world. Do you think my blissful demon palace is very evil?" Chu Xiu said expressionlessly, "I cultivate the demonic path, but also the Buddhist path. The martial path is just a kind of power. The Buddhist path is yang, and the demons are yin. The demonic path doesn't mean that it's inhumane. In any case, I've never heard of any demonic cultivator who became famous in the pugilistic world by slaughtering the innocent. Power is just a method. Those who lose themselves in power for the sake of obtaining power are either lunatics or weaklings. Those who take the initiative to refine this hungry ghost incarnation, rather than calling them devils, it would be better to call them demons." Yu Xian smiled bitterly and said, "That's right. They disregard everything for the sake of obtaining power, but in fact, they've already lost themselves in power. You're not a martial artist from the ancient times, so you don't know how powerful the Six Paths Demon Venerable was, and how amazing he was. His Six Paths Incarnation secret art is also a fusion of the Daoist, Buddhist, and demonic scriptures. His strength is even second to the demonic path's supreme expert who entered here hundreds of years ago. Once he's able to refine the Six Paths Incarnation, he might really be able to rival that demonic path's supreme expert. However, the Six Paths Demon Venerable was too overboard, so all the experts in the pugilistic world joined forces to besiege him. Not just the righteous path, but even the demonic path. Because the Six Paths Demon Venerable wanted to refine the Asura Incarnation, he once slaughtered the demonic path. Many people died in that battle, including the Six Paths Demon Venerable, but the hungry ghost Dao's secret art was obtained by my blissful demon palace. I suggested Master to destroy the secret art, but more people wanted to refine the hungry ghost Dao's incarnation in secret. Because in that battle, even a half-finished hungry ghost Dao's incarnation caused great damage to those who participated in that battle. Because they saw the power and terror of the hungry ghost Dao's incarnation, they desired that power even more. Chu Xiu frowned and said, "So in the end, they didn't listen to you?" Yu Xian nodded with a bitter smile and said, "Yes, Master didn't listen to me, and almost no one else supported me. They didn't want to destroy such a powerful secret art, so they secretly refined the hungry ghost Dao's incarnation. As for me, because I tried to persuade them many times, even Master started to hate it. As a punishment, I even had to feed the hungry ghost, staying with the things I hated the most all day long." Chu Xiu said lightly, "But in the end, you chose to become a hungry ghost, an existence like those monsters. There were no saints in this world, and Chu Xiu did not believe that there were saints in this world. Everyone had their own selfish desires. Even Master Tam Yuan, who had once imparted the sun-changing art to Chu Xiu, had walked step by step from an ordinary monk to a holy monk. Yu Xian was a person of the demonic path. No matter how kind he was, it was impossible for him to be so innocent." The bitter smile on Yu Xian's face deepened. He said in a self-deprecating manner, "Yes, I'm actually afraid of death. I regret it now. If I hadn't disobeyed Master back then, I wouldn't have ended up like this. I thought they would come back for me, but they didn't. The Bliss Demon Palace's array formation was sealed, and I couldn't get out. If I wanted to live, I could only think of other ways. Transforming into a hungry ghost would make me immortal for thousands of years. Coupled with sufficient blood and sleep, living for 10,000 years wouldn't be a problem. It was just a momentary lapse of thought that led me down the path of evil. After becoming a hungry ghost, I was no longer me. My intelligence was gradually eroded, and in the end, I split into another hungry ghost personality. My original self could only hide in the depths of my soul. If you hadn't used your essence soul's secret technique to completely invade my mind, I probably wouldn't have the chance to see a living person for the rest of my life. I've always been very afraid of death, but only now do I know that what's more terrifying than death is living a life worse than death. Your essence soul's secret technique has actually severely injured the hungry ghost personality. I've also temporarily obtained the rights to manage this body. I'll end my own life in a while, but this is a joyous occasion. I'm finally free. As a token of my gratitude, I'll give you something. What is it? Chu Xiu asked. Yu Xian said in a deep voice, the hungry ghost Dao's incarnation. A true incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao, and also the last incarnation of the hungry ghost Dao in this world. Chu Xiu raised his brows and said, it's this thing that caused you to become like this, and you still want to give it to me now? However, I don't want to become like you. I don't mind being a demon, but at the same time, I want to be a human. Yu Xian shook his head and said, what harmed me was not the hungry ghost Dao's secret technique, but human greed. Furthermore, the true hungry ghost Dao's secret technique only refines an incarnation, and not your original body that's neither human nor ghost like me. Those hungry ghosts and ferocious creatures in the outside world, as well as my original body, are actually just half-finished products. Chapter 565. No one had actually seen what the hungry ghost Dao incarnation looked like, as even the Six Paths Demon Lord had never successfully refined it. Yu Xian stared at Chu Xiu and said, the essence of the hungry ghost Dao incarnation lies in devouring its own kind, and finally turning yourself into the strongest hungry ghost, becoming the true hungry ghost Dao that devours everything. Although you're not a hungry ghost, there's a strange thing in your body that can digest the soul blood of hungry ghosts, and even devour their mental strength. You've already digested the soul blood, so you can't condense a hungry ghost Dao with a physical body. However, you can sacrifice your mental strength to the hungry ghost Dao and make it yours. You've already killed all the hungry ghosts here, and you've condensed enough soul blood of hungry ghosts. The reason why it hasn't evolved into the true hungry ghost Dao is because you haven't integrated the true hungry ghost Dao's secret technique into your body. I'll give it to you later, but I'll only give you the method to condense the hungry ghost Dao, not the method to refine these hungry ghosts and the most crucial formation patterns. From now on, you'll be the first possessor of the hungry ghost Dao in this world, but at the same time, you'll be the last possessor of the hungry ghost Dao in this world. With that, Yu Xian raised the bamboo flute in his hand and wanted to blow it, sending Chu Xiu out of the illusion. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said, wait, I still have a question for you. Yu Xian was stunned. What is it? What exactly was the great ancient calamity? This question had been bothering Chu Xiu for a long time. It could be said that everyone in the pugilistic world wanted to know. Shui Wuxiang and the others had been sealed before the great ancient calamity, so they didn't know anything about it at all. However, Yu Xian was someone from the end of the great ancient era, so he definitely knew about it. In the end, Yu Xian smiled bitterly and shook his head. I really don't know. Before the great calamity of ancient times started, I heard some rumors, but I was imprisoned because I disobeyed my master. I was punished to feed those hungry ghosts. I was expelled from the center of the blissful demon palace, and they didn't tell me anything. When the great ancient calamity began, I had already transformed into a hungry ghost and was in a deep slumber. By the time I woke up, the great ancient calamity had already ended. Everywhere was desolate, and the space where the bliss demon palace resided had even been severed. Actually, I really want to know what happened back then. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows tightly. Things were stuck here again. It was really depressing. By the way, do you know the names of the 3 Pristines Temple and the Lingbao Temple? Yu Xian was stunned and said, "Of course I know. The 3 Pure Palace is the supreme of the Dao sect. The cultivation of the 3 great celestial venerables already stands at the pinnacle of the Jianghu, transcending mortality and entering sainthood, like immortals and gods. The Lingbao Temple is one of the 3,000 Dao sects. Although they don't have many people, they are extremely powerful. The Lingbao Temple's secret technique, the Lingbao Light, is said to be able to destroy any divine weapon. None of the disciples from the Lingbao Temple are mediocre. The temple master of the Lingbao Temple, Immortal Lingwu, is one of the rare powerhouses in the world. Although he keeps a low profile, his cultivation is close to the 3 great celestial venerables. He has condensed 360 Lingbao lights in his true martial core, and divine weapons and sharp divine weapons are like scrap iron in front of him. Chu Xiu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that his previous guess was correct. The 3 Pristines Palace was extraordinarily powerful, and that seemingly small Daoist temple was actually a well-known existence in ancient times. Chu Xiu still wanted to say something, but Yu Xian's expression changed slightly at this moment. There's not much time left. If we delay any longer, then my hungry ghost personality will awaken. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Xian played the bamboo flute in his hand. The illusion in front of him was destroyed, and Chu Xiu returned to reality in an instant. In the illusion, Chu Xiu and Yu Xian talked for a long time. However, that was in the illusory world of mental power. In the real world, only an instant had passed. On the other side, Daoist Guangning and the other 2 were still attacking the hungry ghost Yu Xian. Because of Chu Xiu's secret technique, Yu Xian was forced to retreat step by step. However, at this moment, Yu Xian's eyes revealed a trace of clarity. The corpse qi around him burned wildly, and he charged towards Chu Xiu at the cost of his origin energy. If Daoist Guangning and the others wanted to block this level of power, they would definitely be injured. Therefore, other than Daoist Guangning, who subconsciously used the yin-yang duality sword formation to block and failed, the other 2 actually dodged immediately. They thought that this hungry ghost Yu Xian hated Chu Xiu to the core. Therefore, he didn't even care about his origin energy to kill Chu Xiu. In the face of such a desperate existence, Yu Qifeng and Huangfu Weiming certainly didn't want to forcefully block it. Even if Chu Xiu was killed later, the monster's vitality would certainly be greatly damaged. Anyway, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Yu Xian's body that was burning with endless corpse qi arrived in front of Chu Xiu. His eyes revealed a trace of relief, and his body suddenly exploded. A drop of extremely dense black soul blood integrated into Chu Xiu's body. Actually, Chu Xiu was still a little vigilant at the beginning. This Yu Xian said a lot, but in fact, Chu Xiu was still half believing and half doubting. He was a suspicious person to begin with. Even if it was those Buddhist monks from the righteous path, Chu Xiu wouldn't completely believe them, not to mention Yu Xian who was from the demonic path. Therefore, from the beginning, Chu Xiu gathered all of his mental strength. Once he felt something was wrong, he would immediately expel that drop of soul blood from his body. Moreover, Chu Xiu had another layer of insurance, and that was the glass golden thread gu. The glass golden thread gu only had instincts and didn't have intelligence. Therefore, it would naturally reject any malicious things that entered Chu Xiu's body. Chu Xiu's body was equivalent to the glass golden thread gu's home. In his own home, he wouldn't allow any malicious things to exist. However, contrary to Chu Xiu's expectations, this Yu Xian really didn't do anything to the soul blood. He simply wanted to be free, and before he was free, he wanted to give Chu Xiu, the person who accompanied him on his last journey, a gift. That drop of extremely dense soul blood integrated into Chu Xiu's primordial spirit. However, this time, the soul blood wasn't devoured by the glass golden thread goo. That drop of extremely dense soul blood integrated into one with the black mental strength that Chu Xiu obtained from killing the hungry ghost. In the end, it turned into the appearance of a ferocious hungry ghost. This ravenous ghost's appearance was slightly different from the ravenous ghosts that Chu Xiu had killed earlier. Although the general appearance was the same, with a large head, mouth, and swollen abdomen, its skin was pitch black, and it gave off an extremely sinister aura. Moreover, the hungry ghost's head had a pair of sharp horns that were as black as ink, which made the hungry ghost's appearance even more ferocious. At the same time, a piece of information appeared in Chu Xiu's mind. It was a method to use the hungry ghost Dao incarnation, but it didn't include the method to refine the hungry ghost Dao incarnation. In fact, what Chu Xiu currently possessed wasn't a complete hungry ghost Dao incarnation, because it only had a spirit and not a powerful body. However, this didn't matter to Chu Xiu. Even if Yu Xian gave Chu Xiu the method to create the hungry ghost Dao incarnation, Chu Xiu wouldn't use such a method that went against the harmony of heaven and was laborious and unrewarding. Just look at what happened to the demon lord of 6 paths in the past. He was truly angered by both humans and gods, and he was killed by the combined forces of Taoism, Buddhism, and demon Dao. At this moment, Chu Xiu also looked at Yu Qifeng and the other two, and sneered, "The three of you dodged really fast." Yu Qifeng and the others had never thought that the fellow would be so useless when he had already begun to burn his origin energy. He seemed like he was about to throw his life on the line. Chapter 566. Daoist Guangning and the other two were the first to discover the blissful demon palace. It was also them who had gone through many battles to resolve the crisis. In the end, those who came later didn't encounter any danger, but now they were here to share their gains. Whether it was Yu Qifeng, Daoist Guangning, or even the other martial artists, they were naturally unhappy. Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Huangfu Weiming said in a deep voice, "Both of you, we discovered the blissful demon palace first. Now that someone is here to rob us, we should join forces to resist the enemy. After that, we'll split the things in the blissful demon palace equally. How about it?" Yu Qifeng and Daoist Guangning looked at each other and nodded. Huangfu Weiming turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and said, "Young friend Lin, it was just a misunderstanding before. Now that someone is here to rob us, you shouldn't be willing to just give up the things to others, right? How about you join us?" They had seen Chu Xiu's strength, and it was indeed amazing. Even if he didn't use the 7 sabers behind him, his strength was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with most martial arts masters. If they were to join forces with Chu Xiu, they definitely wouldn't be at a disadvantage. However, at this moment, a martial artist in a golden robe with a square and dignified face walked out from behind. Seeing that middle-aged man, Huangfu Weiming immediately thought that it was a close call. This middle-aged man was none other than Xiahou Zhen, the family leader of the Xiahou clan. Among the many martial arts masters, Xiahou Zhen was considered one of the more difficult to deal with. His spirit secret technique could catch people off guard, and the Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique was considered one of the best spirit secret techniques. Once a conflict broke out, Xiahou Zhen could use the imperial spirit technique to fish in troubled waters and obtain many good things from them. However, they still had Lin Yi on their side. Lin Ye's mental strength wasn't inferior to a martial arts master's, and his demonic lineage's spirit secret technique wasn't weak either. They could completely restrain Xiahou Zhen. But at this time, Huangfu Weiming suddenly thought of something. It seemed that Lin Yi and Xiahou Zhen had a feud. The first time Lin Yi appeared in the underworld, he killed Xiahou Zhen's son, Xiahou Wujiang. Although Xiahou Zhen didn't only have Xiahou Wujiang as his only son, he was Xiahou Wujiang, who was once ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. He was also a disciple that Xiahou Zhen had painstakingly nurtured. In the end, he was killed by Lin Yi. As expected, Xiahou eyes reddened the moment he saw Chu Xiu. He shouted angrily, "Lin Yi!" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "So it's Patriarch Xiahou. Long time no see. Are you here to avenge your son's death?" Xiahou gritted his teeth and said, "Not only did you kill my son, but several elites of the Xiahou clan also died in your hands. Even if you are the successor of Dugu Weiwei, I must tear you into pieces today." Previously at the Lingbao Temple, Chu Xiu had also killed several people from the Xiahou clan and the Lu clan. However, Chu Xiu didn't destroy the corpses, so he wasn't afraid of others finding out. Anyway, his identity as Lin Yi was used as a scapegoat. Killing one person was killing, and killing a group of people was also killing. There was no difference. When the surrounding people heard that Chu Xiu had killed the warriors of the Xiahou clan who had entered Shifan Tian, they immediately looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look. Could it be that this fellow has some deep enmity with the Xiahou clan? Why did he always pick on the Xiahou clan? Not only did he kill Xiahou Wujiang, the most outstanding disciple of the Xiahou clan in this generation, but he also killed the elites of the Xiahou clan who had entered Shifan Tian. Those people were the elites cultivated by the Xiahou clan. They were the elites of the next generation, and there might even be a martial Dao grandmaster among them. In the end, all of them had been wiped out by Lin Yi. The grudge between them was huge. Of course, this was indeed the case. Xiahou was really furious at this time. After Xiahou Wujiang was killed, although he didn't go crazy to the extent of qi deviation like Nie Renlong, he also used the power of the Xiahou clan to search for Lin Yi frantically, wanting to avenge his son. In the end, after searching for a few months, Lin Yi seemed to have disappeared from the world and never appeared in Jianghu. It was the same when Xiahou went to investigate Lin Yi's history. This guy seemed to have jumped out of a crack in a stone. Apart from knowing that he had a close relationship with the Phaseless Demon sect and the Yin Demon sect, there was no trace at all. In the end, Xiahou could only give up. After all, he was the family leader of the Xiahou clan, and the elders of the Xiahou clan wouldn't allow him to focus on these things. This time when Shifan Tian opened, Xiahou was actually prepared to kill Lin Yi. Since Lin Yi was an elite cultivated by the Yinma clan, he would definitely come when Shifan Tian opened. If Lin Yi didn't have any demonic experts protecting him, Xiahou would definitely kill him to avenge his son. As for whether it would attract the revenge of the demonic experts, Xiahou wasn't worried at all. In this Jianghu, there was never a rule that only you can kill, and others can't kill you. Although Xiahou didn't know who was backing Lin Yi, the Xiahou clan had been one of the 9 great clans for so many years, so it wasn't like they didn't have any trump cards. Moreover, Lin Yi was from the demonic path. Once a demonic expert pressured the Xiahou clan could also ask for help from the Yin clan of Xianxia. Although the 9 great clans weren't very harmonious, they could still maintain an attitude of cooperation in the face of external enemies. If even the Yin clan of Xianxia couldn't stop them, there were still other orthodox sections. Now that the demonic Dao was faintly showing signs of recovery, the righteous Dao sects in the Jianghu didn't want to give the demonic Dao sects even the slightest chance. If the demonic Dao really dared to threaten the Xiahou clan's connections in the Jianghu wouldn't be helpless. However, the only thing Xiahou didn't expect was that before he could kill Lin Yi would actually kill all the elite disciples of the Xiahou clan who had entered Shifan Tian first. How despicable! Just as Xiahou was about to make a move, another old Daoist entered the blissful devil palace. This person was Jianghu of the Chunyang Dao sect. Behind him was a young Daoist who was the last surviving young martial art practitioner of the Chunyang Dao sect. Jianghu's temper wasn't very good to begin with. At this moment, his face was as gloomy as water, like a volcano that was about to erupt. Looking around, Jianghu bellowed angrily, "Who killed the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect?" Outside the valley, the corpses of the 3 disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect were still placed there. The Chunyang Dao sect had always put in a lot of effort to nurture disciples. A few years ago, one of their most outstanding disciples had just been killed. Now, another one had died. How could Jianghu accept this? There were some disciples who were also from the Daoist sects but didn't belong to the three major Daoist sects. They pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "Senior Jianghu, this is the person who killed the three junior brothers of the Chunyang Dao sect." Compared to Xiahou Zhen, Jianghu was much more agile. At the moment when he turned his gaze to Chu Xiu, Jianghu didn't say a word. The sword in his hand was ignited with pure yang qi, and he slashed straight at Chu Xiu. Even if Chu Xiu didn't kill the disciples of the Chunyang Dao sect, Jianghu would kill Chu Xiu if he met him, not to mention that Chu Xiu already had a deep hatred with the Chunyang Dao sect. Jianghu didn't need to say those ruthless words to tear Chu Xiu into pieces. His actions had already proved everything. The pure yang sword aura that was as vast and hot as the sun slammed down, bringing pressure to Chu Xiu like Mount Tai. It was extremely powerful. Previously in the outside world, Jianghu was at a disadvantage when facing Yun Zhongjuan, but in fact, that was because Yun Zhongjuan's strength was too strong. Jianghu was definitely at the top among the martial Dao masters of the real pellet state. At least, he was the strongest among the martial Dao masters that Chu Xiu had fought with. Chu Xiu made a gesture, and the Hell Guardian Wisdom King image appeared behind Chu Xiu. The Wisdom King's palm slammed down, suppressing the world. At the same time, it also wanted to suppress Jianghu's pure yang sword aura. However, the power of Jianghu's pure yang sword aura was simply beyond Chu Xiu's expectations. The Hell Guardian Wisdom King image was almost shattered in an instant. The sword aura fell, and the pure yang aura illuminated the world. Everything within 1,000 meters was shrouded by the hot pure yang aura. Even if Chu Xiu used the heaven sun gazing at air technique, all he could see was a vast expanse of whiteness. There were flaws everywhere, but even the weakest point was not easily broken by the current Chu Xiu. Taking a deep breath, Chu Xiu's body suddenly exuded a strong corpse aura. The hungry ghost soul in Chu Xiu's spirit was released by Chu Xiu. In an instant, the palm-sized soul began to devour Chu Xiu's mental power and aura crazily. It grew to more than 100 meters in size. As it opened its mouth, demonic qi and corpse aura burst out, but it was not to resist, but to wrap and devour. The seemingly majestic pure yang aura was directly devoured by the hungry ghost incarnation, and the hungry ghost incarnation even pounced at Jianghu. It opened its mouth and devoured everything. Wherever it passed, even the aura of heaven and earth was tainted by the corpse aura, and it was finally devoured. What kind of monster is this? Jianghu snorted and formed a seal. Boundless aura condensed into runes that circulated in front of him. As Jianghu stabbed out with his sword, the runes seemed to materialize and condensed on his Dao sword. As his sword slashed down, the 100-meter-long sword aura seemed as though it was going to slash through the heavens and earth, directly slashing the hungry ghost incarnation into pieces. Jianghu only felt that the hungry ghost incarnation was incomparably evil, but at this moment, Daoist Guangning and the other two looked at each other with astonishment in their eyes. The thing that Lin Yi had displayed was clearly in the form of the hungry ghost. Although it did not have a physical body, it had the power of the hungry ghost to devour everything. Apart from the Six Paths Demon Lord, only the blissful Demon Palace had obtained the hungry ghost incarnation's secret technique. Therefore, it was impossible for Lin Yi to have obtained it from the outside world. Therefore, just a moment ago, they were still racking their brains to kill each other. However, Lin Yi had somehow obtained the opportunity to steal the Hungry Ghost Path's secret technique. Chapter 567. Daoist Guangning and the other two recognized the origin of the Hungry Ghost Path's secret technique. However, the three of them didn't have the intention to make a move. To Yu Qifeng and Huangfu Weiming, killing one was one less. It was already kind of them not to add insult to injury. As for Huangfu Weiming taking the initiative to seek help from Chu Xiu, did he say anything about it? Daoist Guangning wanted to make a move, but of course, it wasn't to help Chu Xiu. Instead, it was to help Xianxia. After all, the two of them belonged to the same Dao sect. Moreover, the three disciples of Chunyang Dao sect had died in front of his eyes. However, Daoist Guangning could still be considered as a good person. Jianghu was obviously stronger than Chu Xiu. Seeing that they were working together just now, Guangning didn't add insult to injury. Of course, Chu Xiu had never counted on them. However, after using the Hungry Ghost Path's incarnation to block Xianxia's sword, Chu Xiu's face that was hidden under the mask was extremely solemn. There was a problem with the Hungry Ghost Path's secret technique that Yu Xian gave him. Actually, it wasn't the Hungry Ghost Path's secret technique that had a problem. It was Chu Xiu's own realm that had a problem. Those who cultivated the Hungry Ghost Path's secret technique, be it the Six Paths Demon Lord or the half-human half-ghost Yu Xian, were actually much stronger than Chu Xiu. Therefore, when Chu Xiu used the Hungry Ghost Path's incarnation, the other party immediately tried to absorb Chu Xiu's mental strength and astral energy. Its greedy devouring characteristic simply didn't differentiate between friend and foe. If Chu Xiu wasn't careful, the other party could even absorb all of his energy. However, after stepping into the martial master realm, this kind of thing would be slower. Therefore, when Chu Xiu used the Hungry Ghost Path's incarnation, it could be said to be extremely dangerous. Although it didn't consume as much energy as using the Seven Demon Blade, it was still more dangerous. This way, even though Chu Xiu had quite a number of trump cards, the awkward thing was that he basically couldn't use them casually. The pure young astral energy around Jianghu burned intensely, as if the sun had descended. Looking at Chu Xiu coldly, Jianghu said in a cold voice, "You evil brat, you are vicious and merciless. Cultivating these evil cultivation techniques, who knows how many people you have killed. Today, even if I don't avenge my Chunyang Dao sect's disciple, I will kill you and rid the Jianghu of evil." As soon as he finished speaking, Jianghu made his move again. The sword in his hand split into over 1,000 sword shadows that released boundless pure young astral energy in the air. In the end, it actually turned into an incomparably majestic sword formation. It turned into a meteor of light that fell from the sky with an incomparably powerful might. On the other side, Xiahozhen also moved. He formed a seal with his hand, and golden light shone around him. The boundless power of his soul turned into a storm that swept over with the power of the world. The Xiahou clan's spirit control art used one soul to control people in the initial stage. However, once it was cultivated to the full mastery stage, it would control the world. Chu Xiu was targeted by two martial Dao grandmasters at the same time. Furthermore, they were powerhouses like Xiahozhen and Jianghu. Even an ordinary martial Dao grandmaster would not be able to withstand them, let alone Chu Xiu's heaven and human oneness. Chu Xiu's hand was on the hatred saber, but his attention was focused on the area behind the blissful demon palace. Be it Xiahozhen or Jianghu, he could barely withstand one of them. Now that there were two of them, Chu Xiu's only way out was to escape. He could only hope that the hatred saber was powerful enough to give him a chance to escape. Just when Chu Xiu was about to attack with his saber, a figure in a black robe came from behind. Boundless, turbulent demon qi shrouded Xiahozhen, transforming into countless asuras that danced around him, eroding his will. In an instant, Xiahozhen was alarmed. He could no longer care about attacking Chu Xiu. Instead, he condensed all the power of his soul around him, and the endless golden light of his soul shone. Only then did he disperse all the asuras. Sky Demon Formless Technique. It's a demon from the Phaseless Demon Sect. The Phaseless Demon Sect was a large sect of the lurking devil lineage, and they often stirred up trouble. They were quite famous in the underworld. Although Xiahozhen had never interacted with the Phaseless Devil sect before, he had still heard of the Phaseless Devil sect's Sky Devil Phaseless Mystic technique. The martial artist from the Phaseless Demon sect who suddenly attacked was Mr. Liu. At this moment, Mr. Liu had already stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. Although he had just stepped into this realm not long ago, his strength was not much weaker than Xiahozhen's. They were all martial Dao Grandmasters, but some people had different accumulations in the unity of heaven and man realm. Their strength after stepping into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm was naturally different. For example, people like Chu Xiu and Zhong Xian could compete with martial Dao Grandmasters when they were in the unity of heaven and man realm. When they stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, they would naturally be the best among those in the same realm. Mr. Liu was also such an existence. Although he was slightly older than Chu Xiu, Zhong Xian, and the others, his accumulation was also extremely shocking. There were actually not many people who could accumulate such strength in the unity of heaven and man realm. Other than the top 5 on the Longhu leaderboard, among the people that Chu Xiu had met, Mr. Liu was one of them. The former Heavenly Sin Branch leader was also one of them. Although the Heavenly Sin Branch leader had once tricked Chu Xiu, the other party's strength was indeed strong enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become the confidant of the Blue Dragon Society's big dragon head, Bu Tiannan. At this moment, on Chu Xiu's side, Mr. Liu helped Chu Xiu block Xiahozhen. Seeing this, Chu Xiu immediately let go of the hand that was holding the hatred saber. Instead, his qi and blood burned, and the boundless demonic qi and qi fused into one, turning into an extremely evil demon Buddha of Massacre. The demon Buddha of Massacre held the blood saber in his hand and slashed down. The boundless demonic qi and blood burned and directly broke the pure yang sword formation, causing a series of loud explosions. Chu Xiu's face was slightly pale. Previously, when he used the demon Buddha of Massacre, he used the demonic blood technique to absorb other people's qi and blood. This time, he used his own qi and blood. Although his strength was slightly stronger, the feeling of using his own qi and blood was not a good feeling. Mr. Liu walked to Chu Xiu's side and sneered at Xiahozhen and Jianghu, 2 famous martial Dao grandmasters teamed up to deal with a junior, and you guys have the cheek to call yourselves the righteous path of martial arts. Do you guys still care about the rules? Don't you have any shame? I'm ashamed for you guys. Jianghu said coldly, why do we need to care about the rules of the pugilistic world with you demons? Are you even worthy to talk about the rules of the pugilistic world? Jianghu's words were extremely overbearing and unreasonable. Mr. Liu sneered and said, good, good, good. As expected of the so-called righteous sections. This shamelessness is something our demonic path can't compare to. Mr. Liu turned his head and transmitted his voice to Chu Xiu, I say, you're really good at stirring up trouble. How long has it been and you've already provoked 2 guys that you can't afford to offend? Chu Xiu spread his hands helplessly and said, Xiahozhen is an old grudge. However, you also know the Chunyang Dao sect's character. They have a foul mouth. If they want to kill me, I can't just let them kill me, right? Mr. Liu transmitted his voice secretly, later, I'll hold Xiahozhen back. You find a chance to escape. This time in Xiaofan, the number of people from the demonic path is not as many as the righteous path. Especially the people from the hidden devil lineage. Many people did not come due to various reasons. At the very least, we can't find any reinforcements in the surroundings. Chu Xiu nodded. He was not an idiot. Of course, he knew when to fight head-on and when to escape. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Xiahozhen teamed up with Jianghu. Even if Mr. Liu intervened, the situation was still very bad. Mr. Liu's black robe fluttered, and a surging demonic qi burst out. He looked at Mayor Xiahou and smiled, I've long heard that the Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique is unparalleled in the world. I don't know how it compares with my phaseless demon sect's demonic formless technique. Bullying the younger generation is nothing. Patriarch Xiahou, your opponent is me. Xiahou sneered, you're just a nobody who has just stepped into the real pellet state. If it was your phaseless demon sect Situ Li who said that, you think you're worthy? Mr. Lu squinted his eyes and said, you'll know whether I'm worthy or not later. As soon as he said that, the boundless demonic qi around Mr. Lu roared and surged. The black demonic qi evolved into a demonic flame Shura, which appeared behind Mr. Lu. Using his palm as a blade, Mr. Lu slashed forward, and the demonic flame Shura behind him also slashed. In an instant, the demonic qi affected heaven and earth. Xiahou's body suddenly fell into boundless darkness. He couldn't see the slightest light, but he could feel the powerful blade filled with demonic qi. True and false, false and real, the demonic formless technique was both real and illusory. Everyone cultivated it in a different way. The demonic formless technique that Mr. Lu cultivated was a combination of illusion and flesh, shattering the soul. Xiahou was also a famous martial Dao master for a long time, so he naturally wouldn't be defeated so easily by Mr. Lu. No matter what, I'll break it with my own strength. Specks of golden divine light gathered around Xiahou's body. His primordial spirit affected heaven and earth, turning into a storm. As Xiahou punched out, the energy storm tore apart the sky and the earth, tearing apart the boundless darkness. Between Xiahou and Mr. Lu, one had a foundation, while the other had talent. Therefore, the two of them seemed to be evenly matched. As for Jianghu, he didn't say anything and released the pure yang sword aura, directly attacking Chu Xiu. A fierce look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. The demonic flames around him were monstrous, but he didn't retreat. All the demonic qi and killing intent around him gathered together, and he used the annihilating heaven and earth annihilating oblivion killing fist. At the same time, the fist aura also carried a powerful aura that could destroy all laws, and the fist intent was unparalleled. The killing fist collided with the pure yang sword aura. The blazing pure yang sword aura was the best at restraining attributes such as demonic qi and demonic qi, not to mention that Chu Xiu's strength was weaker than Jianghu's. So under the collision, Chu Xiu's fist intent shattered, and the pure yang sword aura entered his body, causing Chu Xiu to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, after the blood was spat out, it burned intensely, rapidly turning into a layer of blood mist that condensed around Chu Xiu's body, causing his speed to increase drastically. He bypassed Jianghu and appeared beside the last young warrior from Chunyang Dao sect. The annihilating heaven and earth annihilating soul shifting technique was used. Before the young warrior from Chunyang Dao sect could say a word, he was already completely under Chu Xiu's control. Chu Xiu grabbed the neck of the warrior from Chunyang Dao sect with his hand, which was tainted with demonic qi, and said to Jianghu with a sinister smile, "Old fart, don't you want to kill me? If you aren't afraid that the young elites of Chunyang Dao sect will be annihilated, then kill me." Chapter 568. In Jianghu's mind, when a junior from the diabolism like Lin Yi encountered him, the only choice he could make was to flee like a rat and do his best to snatch a chance of survival from his hands. This was already not easy. Jianghu had never expected that Lin Yi would be so daring as to do the opposite and even threaten a disciple of the Chunyang Dao sect. Pointing at Chu Xiu, Jianghu's hand trembled in anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "Using a junior as a threat? You demons from the diabolism are always so despicable and shameless. Let go of Ningzhen. Otherwise, the Chunyang Dao sect will definitely use all the strength of the entire sect to make you die a graveless death." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "I'm despicable and shameless to attack a junior. Don't forget, in terms of seniority, I'm the same as this little Daoist. Why didn't you call me despicable and shameless when you two seniors besieged me just now? Didn't you talk about the rules? So, your so-called rules are only for me?" Jianghu was instantly speechless. In fact, everyone present felt the same. Based on the strength that Chu Xiu had displayed just now, everyone subconsciously did not treat him as a junior martial artist. Instead, they regarded him as a martial Dao grandmaster. Holding the neck of the little Daoist, Ningzhen, Chu Xiu said faintly, "All right, don't talk so much. Old thing, retreat 5 kilometers and I'll let this kid live. Otherwise, the Chunyang Dao sect will really have no one in the next generation." The disciple that the Chunyang Dao sect had previously cultivated had been killed by Li Feilian. This had already caused some damage to the Chunyang Dao sect. After all, with the harsh cultivation method of the Chunyang Dao sect, it was not easy to cultivate such a young martial artist at the unity of heaven and man realm. However, although that person was dead, Chunyang Dao sect still had some foundation. These 4 were the more outstanding ones among the younger generation of Chunyang Dao sect. However, if the 4 of them were to die, Chunyang Dao sect would not only have no one in the younger generation, but it could also be said that there were not many outstanding ones. They could only choose the best among the dwarves. This was not good news for the next generation of Chunyang Dao sect. A conflicted look appeared on Jianghu's face. With his temper, he would definitely exterminate all of these demons. He would even sacrifice his own people for that. But for the sake of the sect, he couldn't bring himself to be so ruthless. After a while, Jianghu said coldly, "What if I withdraw, but you kill Ningzhen? I don't dare to believe the words of you people from the devil Dao, nor will I believe them." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Don't worry, I, Chu Xiu, am a man of my word. I will never lie to you. Don't think that I'm from the devil Dao. My words are much more trustworthy than your so-called righteous martial arts world." Jianghu's face was as gloomy as water. He snorted coldly and said, "All right, I'll believe you this time. If anything happens to Ningzhen, I'll definitely tear you into pieces." Just as Jianghu was about to leave, Ningzhen, who had been controlled by Chu Xiu's soul-shifting technique, was struggling in Chu Xiu's hands. The scorching pure yang energy burned continuously along with his qi and blood. Ningzhen had actually relied on his subconscious to burn his own qi and blood to break free from Chu Xiu's soul-shifting technique. Chu Xiu's mental energy was now far greater than most martial Dao masters. If Ningzhen wanted to break free from the soul-shifting technique's control, he had no other choice but to fight with his life. Even Chu Xiu hadn't expected such a violent move. He had actually managed to break through the shackles of his spiritual power in a split second. Ningzhen shouted at Jianghu, "Uncle Master. There's killing intent in his spiritual will. He's lying to you. Don't worry about me. Kill this devil Dao." Before Ningzhen could finish speaking, the demonic qi in Chu Xiu's hands exploded. He exerted force and instantly broke Ningzhen's neck. Throwing Ningzhen's corpse aside, Chu Xiu shook his head helplessly and said, "Why bother? Isn't it good to be a little muddle-headed? At least you can die more comfortably." Ningzhen was right. Chu Xiu was lying to Jianghu. He had killed 3 disciples of Chunyang Dao sect. Whether he killed one more or one less, it made no difference to Chu Xiu. Since there was enmity, he had to kill all the other parties' future hopes. However, the only thing Chu Xiu did not expect was that this disciple of Chunyang Dao sect had such a violent personality. Looking at Chu Xiu, Jianghu's eyes turned red. He suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Countless blood mist condensed into runes in mid-air and attached to the Dao sword in his hand. At the same time, the extreme pure yang astral energy gathered around Jianghu. It was compressed to the extreme and condensed on the Dao sword. In an instant, the Dao sword was like the descending sun, shining brightly. Die! Jianghu slashed down and the Dao sword flew out of his hand. A wave of killing intent condensed and locked onto Chu Xiu. It was the demon-subduing Dao pattern carved with Jianghu's blood essence. The sword would not return to its scabbard until it drank demonic blood. At that moment, Chu Xiu instantly felt an extreme sense of crisis. The pure young astral energy on the Dao sword had been compressed and condensed to the extreme. Although it was only a thin layer, it was comparable to the blazing sun. Everywhere it passed, even the essence qi of heaven and earth was burning. This time, Chu Xiu had really infuriated Jianghu. Even this senior martial Dao master, who had been famous for a long time, was prepared to use a secret technique that would consume his blood essence to kill Chu Xiu. One could imagine how furious Jianghu was. The heaven's sun gazing at air had been cast to the extreme by Chu Xiu. The dense demonic qi and blood mist was also wrapped around Chu Xiu. Together with the internal binding seal, Chu Xiu's speed had exploded to the extreme, but the effect was minimal. With Chu Xiu's current mental strength that surpassed most martial Dao masters, he could see the trajectory of the Dao sword and dodge it in advance. However, the Dao sword was locked onto him. No matter how many times he dodged, the Dao sword was like a maggot attached to a bone, slashing towards him at high speed. Even if Chu Xiu's speed was a little slower, the scorching pure yang astral energy on the Dao sword would suppress the demonic qi around Chu Xiu and gradually weaken Chu Xiu's power. As a martial Dao master, Jianghu hated Chu Xiu to the core at this time. He could no longer care about his own reputation or the subsequent fight in Xiaofan. This time, he wanted to exhaust Chu Xiu to death, using his own foundation to exhaust Chu Xiu to death. Even though Chu Xiu's explosive power was comparable to most martial Dao masters, he had not condensed the martial Dao true core yet. After all, he had not condensed the martial Dao true core yet. Every bit of power he used would be less. In the end, the first one who could not hold on would still be him, Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu did not turn around, but his hand was already on the handle of the hatred saber. However, Chu Xiu was still hesitating. Should he use the seven demon saber or use the hungry ghost Dao incarnation to fight with his life on the line? At this time, Jianghu also stared at Chu Xiu with a gloomy expression, focusing all his attention on Chu Xiu. He knew that Chu Xiu had a trump card, and he also knew that Chu Xiu would not give up so easily. Therefore, he was also waiting for Chu Xiu to take out all his trump cards and defeat him in one fell swoop, letting him feel what despair was. However, at this moment, Jianghu's heart skipped a beat. His perception did not actually sense anything. It was just a kind of sixth sense that came to him on a whim. It was a kind of crisis instinct that he had developed after so many years of killing in the underworld. Should he trust his perception or his instinct? At this moment, Jianghu subconsciously chose the latter. He no longer controlled the principal sword. Instead, with the support of his pure yang gang energy, his speed exploded to the extreme and he dodged to the side. At the same time, he formed a seal with his hand, wanting to use a secret technique to defend himself. However, he had only formed half of the seal when a silver flying dagger had already brushed past his body. Jianghu's incomparably powerful protective gang energy was like air in front of the flying dagger. It had no resistance at all. A silver light flashed and the flying dagger pierced straight into the ground. There was no sound of gang energy exploding, but the flying dagger had already disappeared. Even the crowd's perception could not detect it. One could imagine how deep the flying dagger had pierced into the ground. It had to be at least a few hundred feet deep. "It's you, Li Feilian." Jianghu suppressed the shock in his heart and looked at a martial artist behind him. The martial artist did not look young or old. He should be in his 30s. His appearance was ordinary, extremely ordinary. He was definitely the kind of person that would not stand out in a crowd. He was wearing an extremely ordinary black robe with a belt casually wrapped around his waist. There were also 9 flying daggers on the belt. Including the previous one, he actually only had a total of 10 daggers. The flying dagger on his waist was very ordinary, just like him. The blade was 7 inches long and the handle was as long as a finger. It seemed to be made of ordinary steel. Although it was shiny, there was not a single pattern on it. It was extremely simple. However, it was such an extremely simple flying dagger that had almost severely injured Xianxia, a martial Dao master. At this time, when everyone present heard Xianxia's words, they turned their heads to look at the extremely ordinary man. They could not imagine that this was the former 4th on the Longhu leaderboard and currently ranked 6th, Li Failian. If Xianxia did not speak, even if this person was carrying a flying dagger, no one present would have associated him with Li Failian. Among the top 10 martial artists on the Longhu leaderboard, Li Failian had made the least attacks. However, he was also the most legendary. He killed 1 person with every strike. The only person he killed with 2 strikes was the genius disciple of the pure young Daoist sect of this generation. He had killed one of the important figures of the pure young Daoist sect in the future. Hence, he was hunted down by the pure young Daoist sect. Li Failian hadn't appeared in Jianghu for several years. Seeing him at this time, the people present still couldn't believe it. After all, extraordinary people had extraordinary things. In their opinion, a legendary figure like Li Failian shouldn't be so ordinary. However, Li Failian was really so ordinary. Chapter 569. Everyone in Jianghu knew about the grudge between Li Failian and Chunyang Dao sect, but in fact, everyone knew that it was not Li Failian's fault. Instead, it was Chunyang Dao sect's fault, but they would not say so. As one of the top 10 on the Longhu list, Li Failian's identity was very mysterious. Even Wind-Sweeping Tower had only vaguely dug out some simple information about Li Failian, but they did not know more details. The news about Li Failian that Wind-Sweeping Tower released to the outside world was very simple. His ancestor was one of the strongest in Jianghu before the great calamity of the ancient times. The flying knife in his hand never missed its target, and it even involved space, karma, and other supreme martial arts. This lineage had always been a single lineage. It was neither righteous, demonic, nor evil. It rarely participated in the disputes in Jianghu, and it was extremely low-key. However, occasionally, a successor would appear, and his strength was extremely strong. Li Failian's style was the same as his ancestors for many generations. He was also very low-key. In fact, all the people he had killed had taken the initiative to cause trouble for him. He had never caused trouble for anyone else. Li Failian was not even willing to provoke those ordinary martial arts practitioners, let alone the young geniuses of Chunyang Dao sect. In fact, everyone in Jianghu knew how Chunyang Dao sect behaved. In everyone's opinion, the reason why Li Failian killed people was probably that the person from Chunyang Dao sect had angered Li Failian, and that was why Li Failian killed people. However, there were many things in Jianghu that could not be judged based on right or wrong. Even if Li Failian was not wrong, he was the one who killed people, and Chunyang Dao sect wanted to kill him to avenge their disciple. Over the years, Chunyang Dao sect had been tracking down Li Failian's whereabouts, but they had not found him. Li Failian had not appeared in the eyes of Jianghu people all these years because of the pursuit of Chunyang Dao sect. This was the first time he showed up, and as soon as he appeared, he gave Xianxia a big gift. In a short period of time, Xianxia had encountered 2 of Chunyang Dao sect's biggest enemies. However, before Xianxia could say anything, Li Failian made another move. Li Failian did not mind that his sneak attack had failed to injure Xianxia. After all, his flying daggers were not meant for sneak attacks. In an instant, 3 flying daggers flew out of his hands. There was no powerful stellar energy, nor was there any dazzling power. They were just 3 ordinary silver beams of divine light. Xianxia coldly snorted. At this moment, his Dao sword was slashing towards Chu Xiu, so he did not have a weapon in his hand. However, it did not matter. Jianghu used his finger as a sword and shot out his pure yang astral energy, turning into a sky full of sword light that blocked in front of him. However, Li Falian's 3 flying daggers underwent a strange change at this moment. In mid-air, the 3 flying daggers were faintly discernible. The void seemed to have been folded, and the dense pure yang sword qi seemed to have pierced into the air. As for the 3 flying daggers, they were locked onto Jianghu from 3 different directions. This gave Jianghu a very strange feeling. No matter how he dodged, the 3 flying daggers seemed to be able to hit him. Seeing this scene, everyone present suddenly thought of wind-sweeping buildings' evaluation of Li Falian in the past. This person's martial Dao legacy involved the supreme rules of space and even karma. Currently, in the Jianghu, there were only 2 young martial artists who were qualified to come into contact with such rules. One was Fang Qi Xiao, and the other was Chu Xiu. These 2 people had once competed in the Tao of Karma on the arena of Floating Jade Mountain, and now, Li Falian was the 3rd one. Jianghu's eyes revealed a strong murderous intent. When it came to enmity with Chunyang Dao sect, Li Falian's was deeper than Chu Xiu's. Li Falian had killed the most outstanding disciple of this generation in Chunyang Dao sect, and Chunyang Dao sect had been hunting Li Falian all over the Jianghu, forcing Li Falian to not dare to step into the Jianghu for several years. Now that Li Falian was not dead, Chunyang Dao sect would only have one more enemy at the unity of heaven and man realm. However, with Li Falian's speed of improvement, Chunyang Dao sect would have one more martial Dao Grandmaster level enemy in the future. Of course, be it Li Falian or Lin Yi, they were both targets that Jianghu had to kill. Jianghu held the demon suppression seal in his hand, and his pure yang energy surged. As the seal fell, it directly enveloped the 3 flying daggers in an attempt to suppress them. However, the strange thing was that there was a wave of fluctuation coming from Li Falian's flying daggers. As the power trembled rapidly, the pure yang energy melted away, unable to block the power of the flying daggers at all. Just now, it was this kind of blade that easily broke through the protective aura of Jianghu, a martial Dao Grandmaster, and almost seriously injured him. Seeing this, Jianghu knitted his brows tightly. At this moment, the pure Yang Dao sword was still fighting with Lin Yi. With the support of the demon suppression Dao pattern, the power of the pure Yang Dao sword would not be weakened by much even if he did not use his power for the time being. Right now, Jianghu did not have a weapon in his hand, so this should be his weakest period. Facing Li Falian's blade that seemed to be unable to defend at all, even Jianghu felt that it was troublesome. However, Jianghu was after all a martial Dao Grandmaster of the older generation. Even if he did not have a weapon in his hand, he would not be easily forced into a dead end by a junior like Li Falian. When the 3 flying daggers were about to reach him, a golden light surged around Jianghu's body. It was extremely firm and yang, making Jianghu look like a golden-armored deity. He pointed out with his sword fingers, clashing with 2 of the flying daggers. A powerful force immediately erupted, and the 2 flying daggers were directly shattered by the golden light. At the same time, Jianghu chanted the demon suppression mantra. Waves of ripples surged in the void, and the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth in front of him was constantly vibrating. No matter how the flying daggers changed their laws, their power was completely dispersed, and they directly fell to the ground. Daoist Guangning, who was watching the battle at the side, exclaimed, "It's the Chunyang Dao sect's Yang extreme mystic technique." When did Daoist Jianghu cultivate this technique? Everyone knew that the Buddhist golden body was unparalleled in the world, and it was the pinnacle existence of all the body-tempering techniques in the pugilistic world. However, they did not know that the sect also had countless body-tempering techniques. When cultivated to great success, it would not be inferior to the various Buddhist golden bodies. However, the martial artists of the Dao sect preferred peace and inaction. Very few people would choose to cultivate this kind of body-tempering technique, unless they were really good at it. Jianghu was an old man in the pugilistic world. In fact, he was already close to the stage where his qi and blood were declining. No one would have thought that he would actually spend so much effort to cultivate this kind of body tempering technique. At this moment, Daoist Guangning was also hesitating. Should he help Xianxia? If he didn't help, they all belonged to the same lineage of the three great Dao sects. Seeing Xianxia fighting with his life on the line, Daoist Guangning also couldn't bear to watch. However, if he helped, he would also be tainted with karma. Moreover, this matter had nothing to do with him. Yu Qifeng, who was at the side, transmitted a message to Daoist Guangning, telling him not to interfere and to calmly watch the development of the matter. On the other hand, at this moment, Xianxia, who'd blocked 3 of Li Failian's flying daggers in succession, sneered. However, Li Failian didn't even bother to speak or ridicule Xianxia. Instead, he took out a flying dagger and slid it through his meridians. Blood instantly gushed out, but the flying dagger was dyed blood red. 5 flying daggers that were stained with Li Failian's blood shot out in a straight line towards Xianxia. The blood-red line connected the 5 flying daggers together. Although they seemed to be separated, there was a faint karmic connection between them. The moment the daggers shot out, there was even a faint image of ghosts and gods wailing, causing Xianxia's primordial spirit to feel a trace of coldness. These 5 daggers didn't just slash at Xianxia's body. They also slashed at his 3 flowers above the head and the 5 qi in his body. At this moment, Chu Xiu was still entangled with the pure Yang Dao sword. Without Xianxia's control, a demon-subduing formation that was powered by qi and blood couldn't do anything to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had seen Li Failian's series of attacks just now. He had to admit that Li Failian was really a character. He only had 10 sabers. His first sneak attack had failed, and the next 3 had been blocked by Xianxia. When he attacked again, he used the secret technique of burning his blood essence. He was ready to fight with his life on the line. Li Failian still had one last dagger in his hand. However, Chu Xiu guessed that the last dagger was Li Failian's life. Once the dagger was used, he would lose his life. After attacking 3 times, Li Failian revealed all his trump cards and risked his life. Under Li Failian's seemingly cold and ordinary appearance, there was an extreme madness hidden. From the moment he appeared until now, Li Failian didn't even say a word. There was no killing intent or hatred in his eyes when he looked at Xianxia. It was as if killing Xianxia was just a mission for him, a stage that he had to go through in life. It was incomparably natural. In the Jianghu, people like Li Failian were usually ruthless and quiet. People like Li Failian were the hardest to deal with and the hardest to provoke. A person who could fight to the death with bloodshot eyes was actually not scary. What was scary was people like Li Failian. He had clearly decided to fight to the death with you, but you still didn't know it and continued to resist calmly. At this moment, Xianxia was in such a state. Although he wasn't calm, he didn't expect Li Failian's attacks to be so unpredictable. Just now, he only attacked with 3 daggers to test Xianxia's strength. Now, it was a killing move. The 5 blood daggers didn't just slash at Xianxia's physical body, but also the 5 qi in his body. Although Xianxia cultivated the extreme yang mysterious technique and his physical body wasn't weak, in the face of such a strange attack, it was a pity that it was a little too late even if Xianxia put on a desperate stance. In the midst of the golden pure yang qi, Xianxia's strength was condensed to the extreme. A smear of blood rose and turned into a demon-subduing seal that condensed in his palm. With a palm strike, a flying dagger was directly shattered. It seemed like he had casually shattered the 5 flying daggers, but Xianxia couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His mysterious technique was broken, and his face turned pale. Although the daggers were shattered, the saber intent slashed into Xianxia's body without any hindrance and slashed at his internal organs and 5 qi. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled Sword Will YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.